So today we are going to be talking again about single white females, but instead of living alone, we'll be talking about, well, it sounds very morbid, but it's going to be called dying alone. But it's just talking about relationships and how it is, what it's like to be single. I don't know how much you can relate to that, considering you've been single for most of the years, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I really haven't had a dating relationship. It's been more of a just I don't know how much I want to actually put into the atmosphere if people watch. But just to be honest, it's been more of a friends with benefits sort of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think the closest I got to was with Cody. He was the last guy, but because he and I both made comments like this could be something instead of just hanging out. But yeah, didn't amount to much of anything. But
hey, at least you tried. I mean, that's more than I can say. I've not had any relationship in the last 5 years. So, I mean, being abroad, I guess it can give me a little bit of an excuse to not be in a relationship, but mainly it was because I don't think I was ready for one. I don't know what I would have done with one. I think I felt like I needed it more than I wanted it, which is not a good mindset to be in.
That's the same as for me, and I feel like it's a big point of contention for people is like you get to a certain age and you're like, well, I should be dating, I should have lost my virginity, I should have this done by now, and all this other stuff. And I'm like, you know what? There's no set time frame.
Right.
You don't have to. And I joked about it with my therapist the other day because we had started talking about what are some attributes that I want in a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be describing a situation where it was like, yeah, I don't want that. And she'd be like, okay, so you want someone who's not aggressive. You want someone who's dependable. Things like that. So I was like, okay. So she's helping me put words to it.
Mm.
And then the last time we spoke, I was like, well, I got a cat. So I think I just needed a companion. So I don't really need a boyfriend. So we laughed. I was like, I just needed to get a cat. That's all. And it really, truly having my cat has been a help because I think my biggest struggle with being alone and having the anxiety and some depression that I have, the biggest thing for me is it's not necessarily having to talk to someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's knowing that someone I know deeply and truly is close by, or someone that I really, really, truly care about. So, like me having a cat, I may not know him 100% yet, but I care about that little sucker so much. So he, for example, the other day, he decides it's totally fine to eat 12 inches of yarn. And I'm like, what are you doing? So I just start pulling and it's just popping out of his mouth. So I'm to hold his chin. I'm like, no, we don't eat these things. And he's like, then pay attention to me kind of attitude, putting on all my craft stuff. And I was like, all right, fine. I apologize. I'm not being a good human. But
I definitely think that there is this idea that, well, I remember one of the things my mom used to say was you can get into a relationship after you've done your career for 2 years. So basically I was allowed to start dating at 23. Which I think is very strange, but I understood where she was coming from about you need to have some sort of a sense of self before you should get into a relationship with somebody else. And I completely agree with that. But sometimes I worry that, like, maybe I kind of missed the boat when it comes to, like, relationships, because, I mean, I haven't had one ever, which sounds really sad, but at the same time, I'm like, I haven't wanted one either. And that's kind of what I was coming at. Like, I think for a really long time, I thought I needed one. You know, like this idea, like, oh, you have to be in a relationship. You need to be in a relationship. And it's like, well, why? I'm perfectly fine on my own. Am I the happiest person in the world? No, but who is? And it's not like people who are in relationships are like crazy happy all the time. It takes work. So I just haven't wanted to put in that work with anybody. I mean, putting in the work with just normal relationships was hard enough abroad. So putting in the work to have a romantic relationship stay afloat, even if that person was with me where I was living, I think would have been very difficult for me because I was dealing with so much else, like, you know, the culture shock and then getting used to living in another area and growing up, because that also took place while I was living abroad. I just think that, you know, there is this like belief for women mostly, because we do have a biological clock ticking on us, that we have to find a relationship really fast, and it doesn't always lead us to the best places. So I don't know how I really feel about like where I am in my life, but I'm happy to say that I'm finally in a place where I do want a relationship. I don't think I need it. I want it. So that was a good move.
A good start.
A good start, yes. So I'll try to actually go towards that once I get back home.
Yeah. That's for sure. It's always it's always interesting to, like, my biggest point of contention with like trying to date or talk to a guy is like trying to figure out what to talk about. Because I feel like, so I gravitate towards, we talk for a bit and then we bring up things behind closed doors, so to speak. And it's not healthy, and I know that, but it's my own self-confidence thing where I'm like, well, I can't keep the guy on hold for that long. And I think it's pushed upon women to, like, push right away into having sex or into creating a deeper relationship right away when it doesn't need to be.
Right.
If you have a mutual interest in each other, you talk fairly often, and I'm not the one to like be on my phone all the time. So usually when I'm talking to a guy, I'll be like, look, I go put my phone down and I'll ignore the world for a couple hours. You know, if they're like, that's cool, great. That's fine for me. I've learned that much. It's like, hey, I just have to be honest with you and say, hey, I'm not one that's going to text you all the time.
Right.
Like, we both have to text each other to make this work. I feel like there's this stigma that, women have to go and, like, initiate the contact first, or, like, have to be more forward. And then on the guy's side, not pushing it right away. So it's like there's this disconnect in between of what people are expecting with a relationship or what they're supposed to expect.
Well, I think that, unfortunately, when it comes to that sort of thing, like, it is kind of put on the woman to figure out when the sex happens, because a man's always going to be up for it, whether
that's stigma too, because the guy might not be ready for it.
I guess that is a stigma, but I think because there's that societal under belief that a man is always going to be up for it, that when a woman, that it does kind of feel as though it's on the woman to be like, okay, we are not having sex now. We'll have sex, on date 3, or we'll have sex on our third, anniversary. I don't know. Obviously I don't know very much about relationships. But I agree with you that there is kind of this pressure, because I was even thinking about it. I was like, man, I'm not going to be ready after 3 dates to be that intimate with someone. I mean, I don't know at what point I would feel comfortable with someone. The closest I came was after like 2 months in a friendship with somebody, and it ended up like ruining our friendship, and we never talked again. So it's just, it does come to a point where it does kind of fall on the woman. But I agree with you, like it is something that maybe the man's not ready for either, and it just puts a disconnect between the two. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about with our roommate agreement. I think in a relationship you just have to be open and honest. You have to talk things through, and just be truthful. I mean, I expect myself to probably tell him, most likely on the first date, that I'm still a virgin. So who knows?
Hey, you don't have to talk about that on the first date.
Yeah. Well, now the whole internet knows, so it doesn't matter.
Just put it out for the whole world to know.
I'm not ashamed of it. Like, it just happened that way. I don't really care. I know that I've made the choice that was right for me, and if it so happens that I lose that virginity sooner rather than later, or later rather than sooner, then that's the way things were supposed to be. I truly believe that things happen for a reason, and I did not have sex because I was not ready for it. And I wish there were more women and men willing to say that to themselves. I'm not ready for this. I'm young. I don't want to be in that intimate of a situation. I'm not comfortable with it, and I'm okay with waiting, because I think I'm going to benefit from being the age I am. I understand a lot more about myself now. I know I'm actually comfortable with my body rather than pretending to be comfortable with my body. I learned a lot from just waiting, which I know it doesn't sound fun. It wasn't fun. Don't get me wrong.
Well, I understand the benefit of it now, because I look at I'm not going to name any names, but I look at some people in my life who have either hopped into relationships right away, have been consistently in relationships most of their adult life, and maybe haven't lived alone, or if it was alone, it was a short time or whatever, and they're still learning themselves and haven't gotten a chance to learn themselves on their own. And I think it is beneficial, because now I learned that, yes, I do not like to clean. Cleaning is disgusting. I think it's weird. I don't want to do it. And then my hands smell gross, like chemicals or whatever, or vinegar, depending on where I'm cleaning. And I'm like, okay, I don't like cleaning. So I have to find someone who doesn't mind cleaning. But, I'm learning about, okay, I like to experiment with different foods. I want someone who appreciates trying something new. If I decide to, I don't know, make a veggie burger for the first time and it doesn't turn out right, I'm not going to ask them to, eat it if it tastes disgusting, but, at least try it with me. Or if I want to try a new restaurant, or try Ethiopian food, or go to a town I've never been to before. I want someone who has an adventurous spirit, and it's being able to say, this is where I am in my life, to be like, I want someone like this too.
Mm-hmm.
And if I wouldn't have figured that out in college or high school.
Yeah.
Hell, at that point, I was just looking to have a boyfriend, or at that point. And then, I look at it too as, so some of the choices I made in college were not the smartest, as you and I know, and I'm not going to digress into detail. But there's still parts of it that I think about and I still hold. But at the same time, it's at the point where I'm like, you know what? I have to treat it as, like you said, a learning experience. I've learned that I can't jump in, and it took me 3 times. I can't jump into the bedroom right away. I have to get to know that person. And every person that I've talked to who's really and truly, honestly found the person that they love, they all claim the sex is better. And I'm like, all right, whatever. It's just two bodies colliding together. What is the, you know?
But you know what, Emma, I just want to say this to you because I know we talk about this a lot. I sometimes really envy you, you know, for the decisions you did make back in college, because I feel like it has allowed you later on in life to make other decisions that I envy you for. Because I've always been afraid of it. You know, I'm still afraid of it. Sex, that is. That's what I'm talking, but it is. But I think that, you know, having the courage to say to yourself, you know what, this is what I wanted at that time. And you went out and you got it, like, honestly. And though it didn't end the way you wanted it to, I think that has allowed you to learn a lot more about yourself. Because I told you about the situation that happened with that friend after a couple months, and then we did something and it changed our friendship. Well, I learned so much from that experience. And yeah, it was sexual in nature. But because of that, like, I know now so much more than I did before I did anything at all. Like, before, I was afraid. I thought I wouldn't be comfortable with being naked. I thought I wouldn't be comfortable with anybody. I didn't think I would know what to do in that situation. And it just taught me that there's no reason to be afraid of that. There's no reason to think I can't be a normal human being who can interact with another normal human being on a sexual level. Like, we are all built in a way that we know, okay, this is sounding a lot like animals, but we instinctually know what to do. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so, like, the fears that I had went away. And because of that instance, I was then able to go on vacation where I truly asked myself, like, why I did that. Because I'd never done anything like that before. And I'm not the kind of person, you know, who does do those kind of things without really thinking it through. And it was a very spur-of-the-moment decision. And that has always been kind of where I end up, is that I end up in this spur-of-the-moment decision, and then I get into a relationship or I get into a moment that's very intimate with another person, and I don't even like these people that I end up with. So I was like, why does this keep happening? And it's because I'm running away from the people I actually want to get to know because I'm afraid of hurting myself. But then I end up with people who don't matter to me, who I don't even connect with on a intellectual, let alone physical level. And then I end up completely regretting 100% the interaction versus it being like, well, you know what? At least I liked them because they, you know, made me feel this way, or I liked them because they thought this way like me. You know, it's never been that. It's always been like, well, you know, he did something first, or I did something first, and it just happened. And it's like the first situation is always going to be better because we can actually relate on a level that is intimate versus, oh, there's just two people that happen to be in the same space at the same time doing stuff together.
Yeah. No, and I have to agree. It's the biggest thing is a fear of, for me, it's a fear of rejection. Mm. And at this point in my life, like, there's, and you know this person, there's a person that I think I could be with, but they don't want to ruin our friendship. But I don't want to bring it up again because I've brought it up and this person said no. So why bring it up again, even though we tick enough boxes and we get along really well and we have chemistry, or at least I think we have chemistry, but it's not what this person wants. And I'm like, okay, so do I keep trying or do I move on? And at this point, I've tried once and I don't want to deal with it again. So why do it again and get hurt and be upset and whatever?
Well, you know
So
my
now,
thoughts on this. I think you should move
yes,
on. But I know that you also continue to go back to it. So, as I said before, and I will say again, you have to talk to that person.
I know.
That's all I can tell you.
Ugh.
I know, it's the worst advice, and I don't even follow my own advice, trust me. Talking to people, I used to be like, why don't they just talk to the person? But now I get it. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to talk to
Well,
people.
I was talking with Mom the other day. I was like, because I had said, when I'm comfortable bringing someone home, and she had talked about certain boys that my sister had brought home because we were just talking about relationships and stuff. And she was like, well, I didn't like this one, and I didn't really care for that one, but it's what your sister wanted. And I was like, Mom, I love you, and I tell this woman just about everything. So she knows most everything that we've talked about, except for the last part. So now she's going to want to know if she watches this.
Sorry, Jane. It's all for me.
But, so, she's like, there were some that I didn't like. And I was like, Mom, I hope you understand that if I bring someone home, it's because I like them a lot. But at the same time, I want you to approve of them. And she goes, well, I don't want to ruin our relationship or your relationship with that individual. And I said, Mom, I hope you understand, though, that if you see something, and when we have a time alone, that you need to tell me. So, because the way I work is I see something, I don't know how I feel about it, I stew on it for a couple days, and then I make my decision. It's how my brain works. I got to sit on it for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So if she sees, let's say the person's been, in the presence of my parents, maybe putting me down or, being a little more, in essence, verbally abusive, and I'm not seeing it.
Sorry.
I'm like, Mom, bring that up to me. I want you to know that our relationship is pretty solid, that I want you to tell me these things. And she goes, I don't know, Emma. I don't know how I feel about that because she doesn't want me to get hurt. And she doesn't want to ruin what we have right now. And I'm like, I get that. But at the same time.
But I mean, I feel like it's something that, I feel like your mom would know the difference between he's, I don't know, eating with the wrong utensil and that drives her crazy. Versus he's talking down to you. If she sees him talking down to you and you're accepting that, I would feel like your mom would take you aside and be like, Emma, he said this to you. Why didn't you say anything back? Or did you not hear how he talked to you? I feel like there's a difference between what maybe she was saying about your sister's boyfriends. Okay, maybe she didn't like how they came off, or maybe how they talked to her, or maybe how they, wiped their shoes on the floor. You don't know. She wasn't being very specific, I assume. So maybe there was something what?
She was being specific, but it was kind of like a private conversation, so I didn't want to bring everything up.
Oh, okay. Well, then I feel like that's different. And your sister's also, hi Sarah, different. So I just think that,
different things that we want.
Right, yeah, exactly. And I think your mom would know that because she knows you girls. She knows that saying maybe that to your sister would have gone one way versus saying something like that to you. And you've now had that conversation with her where you're like, no, Mom, if he does something like that, you need to tell me. Because I think that's what it comes down to. And I would assume my mom would do the same thing. I would never assume my mom would see a guy treat me a certain way and then just be like, well, she'll figure it out. If I'm, sitting there and he's treating me a certain way that she does not care for, I would expect her to say something to me, or if she sees something that I'm not seeing, then I would expect her to share her opinion with me. And I expect her to be respectful about it. I don't think she would be like, you have to break up with this man right now. No, I would think she would be like, look, I just saw that he does these things. How do you feel about them? And then maybe I could be like, oh yeah, he's nervous. Or, oh yeah, he does that when he meets new people. Or, oh, I didn't see that. What? What are you talking about? I'm still in love. Why are you telling me, Mom? No, whatever. Whatever the interaction is, but I would expect that it be handled in a way that is respectful to not just you, but to your relationship. And I think your mom knows that. But
yeah, and I think we're at that point too. It's like, you know what, I talk a lot of things through with my mom, and she's pretty honest and open with me about a lot of things too. And well, it's not a bad thing to be alone. Just to like read this whole thing, it's not a bad thing to be alone.
I feel like being single definitely gets that like stigma of like, oh, you're alone, so you must be like messed up. It's like, no, I just am not wanting to be in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like I do feel like when I get into a date, I am going to have to explain why for the 27 years I've been on this earth, I've never been in a relationship. But I feel like at the same point, I can just say what I said. It's like, I didn't want one. I wasn't in the place for one. And now I am. And like, I don't see what other explanation I need. And, I don't think if anybody was going to be like feeling weird about that, then that's just not the person for me. That's all I was saying.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's finding that person who understands. Like, it's a kindred spirit.
Mm.
So, like, maybe the person that you first start with is the one you're going to end up with, or, it's a lot of, all I can think right now is fishing metaphors, which is so stupid. But
it's a lot of fishing. It is.
You have to try and keep trying, and that's what sucks. Is the amount of trying. You get disheartened, and you're just like, I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore. And then, supposedly at that point, it's always this. Well, when you're least expecting it, when you're not looking for it, when yada yada yada. Well, does that mean I need to not be looking for it, or I put in an effort to look for it?
Excuse you, I have not been looking for it for the last 27 years, and it hasn't found me. So I don't know what these people are talking about. Okay.
Well, and then it's this point of I try looking for it, and then it's the person that I'm not expecting. Is that what it is?
But I feel like that kind of sentiment, kind of comes from the fact that you have a lot of male friends that you wouldn't see as boyfriend material. But I don't have male friends.
Exactly.
Well, I have male friends. Don't get me wrong. There are men out there that I'm friends with. But I just mean, like, I'm not going to be anywhere near them. I'm going to Wisconsin, and they don't live there, that's for sure.
No, just a bunch of crazies live in Wisconsin.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just have to find the right crazy for me.
Yes, that is my philosophy. Every person has the right amount of crazy for another person.
I really do hope so, because, I'm getting to that age where I do want to start getting there. That sounded really bad. I just want to get to a place where I can say I've had a successful relationship. That's all. That's not too much to ask, is it? What is a successful relationship?
And I look at it now, too, that, like, I look at my parents, and my mom said that, and I don't know my dad's feelings on it, but when they were married, she's like, your dad was what I needed. And we both outgrew each other in different ways. And then they both met people who are wonderful and fit them so well. And they have both learned a lot about healthy relationships and how they work and give and take and accommodating your partner while also getting what you want. And this being able to have a healthy argument, It might not be, like, I never once saw my parents fight. I never once saw them have a disagreement because they did it behind closed doors. So this is now why I have a huge fear of confrontation and also why I have a giant fear of rejection. So, I've learned these things. But now I'm watching my parents, and I watch them have disagreements now in front of me. And I'm like, all right, I see where you're coming from. This is a healthy argument. You go to bed happy still, It's not we're going to fight so bad that I can't even sleep next to you tonight.
Mm.
You know? It's never that. It's just, hey, we had an argument. Let's talk about it. Why did we fight so bad? Why are we so butting heads? And most of the time, there's external issues like you had a really crappy day at work, you know? And it just stemmed from there. So it's really interesting to look at and think about now and stew on and be like, that's what it is. And it's not as big and dramatic as I thought.
I feel like the main thing to get out of this conversation is wherever you are in your life, you don't need to feel as though you need a relationship. I think especially as a woman. I can't really talk for men as much because I don't really know how they feel about this sort of thing. But I think, as women, and I think it's becoming a lot more normal. I've seen that a lot more friends who are not in relationships have no want for a relationship, honestly. But if that is what you want, then go for it. Because that was something I think, for a while I kind of lied to myself about. I kind of was like, no, I'm fine being by myself. I'm fine. And then kind of in the back of my head, when I was like, well, I haven't been looking for this amount of time and it hasn't happened. It's like, well, maybe I was kind of looking for it, at least, or like hoping that some, like in the romance movies or the romance books where just some guy like knocks into you or accidentally steps on your phone. Why do they always break something? Oh my gosh.
I mean, if they have to make a grand entrance,
yeah,
when they
basically
break
what I'm saying.
We're like, damn something.
Yeah, so like, I guess I was always expecting that to happen. When in reality, you're gonna meet the person more normally, most likely through maybe online or maybe just like going out somewhere. And that was the biggest issue I had, like being abroad. I wasn't going out. And when I was going out, I wasn't looking for men to find because honestly, I didn't think I was going to live there my whole entire life. So it just wasn't the right place to be getting into a relationship. Because I'm always the one, I think I look at relationships poorly, probably have the wrong perception of them, but I always think that how long can this last? And if I think it won't last, then I'm not going to even give any energy to it. When I should probably be thinking, do I really want to be with this person? Or does this person attract me? Maybe have to do a little bit more work before I get into a relationship, but at least I'm admitting to myself I want one now. That's where I'm at right now.
That's the step. It's, I was like, oh, I need to have a boyfriend. I need to do this. And like my parents' joke was like, finally you started talking to a guy, because I brought it up when I was seeing Cody for a bit. And I was like, maybe I do need one. And then I'm realizing, like, I don't need a relationship. I don't. But I want one.
Yes.
And I think that's where the change of mindset comes in. Because then when you say you want one, you start thinking about what you want in a person and how you're going to find that versus going to the first person with two legs and I guess you could call it three legs for me. But, three appendages on the lower half. But,
no, I agree. I think also it liberates you a bit when it's no longer I need it, because it's no longer something that you can't live without, because I think there's that fear of like, oh my gosh, I am going to die alone. I'm going to be by myself forever. And I think when you stop saying to yourself, I need a relationship versus I want a relationship, it's like, yeah, I could die alone. But don't we all die alone? So morbid.
Unless you're like strapped to the person and there's a bomb, or like you're both asleep and there's a fire, or you're both in a car accident and you fly off a bridge and drowned.
And most likely you're drowning at different times anyways, so.
This is true, because you would oxidize at different rates. So, for anyone who's watching, I think the biggest thing to take away is what we've been kind of beating at this last few minutes was changing that mindset from need to want, and then putting into words what you want in a partner, and looking for that person not as to be like, hey, we have to do this on a schedule, and like, you know, first date, second date, third date, then the third date you can kiss or whatever the case. Don't put a restraint on it. Just talk. Just communicate with that person that you're going to be with and enjoy the time that you have with them. That's the point of a relationship, is to build a connection with another person who you think reflects you well. You know? I think that's my biggest point of like going into looking for relationships now is like, okay, what do I want?
Yeah.
What do I want? What kind of a person do I want with me for the rest of my life? Because I would ultimately, that's what I would look for, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's just, you know, having that idea. Like, do you want this person for the rest of your life, or do you just want to fling? Like, there's nothing wrong with something casual. And if that something casual turns into something serious, even better. But, you know, like, there's no, like Emma said, there's no rules. I think as women, or maybe just me, I don't know. I've always thought there were like these rules that you had to follow. And there's not. There's nothing that says we're not allowed to have relationships that we want in the way we want them. And just being, again, honest. Honest not just with the other person, but with yourself. Saying to yourself, you know what? I'm not ready for a serious relationship, but I do want to have sex. Fuck. Like, just go have sex. Like, it's fine. Like, I just think that we need to get out of this mindset of, oh, so if I want to have a relationship, that means I have to have a relationship. It's like, why? You know, if you want to be single, be single. If you want to be in a relationship, be in a relationship. It's not that. I mean, I was going to say it's not that hard, but it is hard. I'm not going to lie. It is hard.
It's hard in a different way than it's not rocket science.
But everything's not rocket science, so. Anyways. Well, I think that kind of brings us to the end of our rant. So we are going to let Emma go to her wedding. Not her wedding, but a friend's wedding.
Be my friend for life.
Bye, friend.
By my side, the starry nights, all this fling. I'm not a sad girl.